My sister looked me dead in the eyes in front of 30 people at her engagement party, smirked, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Sorry, Eli, this table is for family only. Maybe you'd be more comfortable over there?" She pointed to a fold-out chair shoved against the wall next to the trash cans. The entire room erupted in laughter like she'd just delivered the punchline of the year. My parents looked down at their plates. My aunts giggled nervously. Her fiancé's family exchanged amused glances. And I stood there, gift in hand, wearing the dress I'd spent 3 hours picking out, feeling my face burn with humiliation as I walked to that chair and sat alone for 2 hours while they celebrated. Then the waiter brought over a bill for $3,200 and placed it directly in front of me, because my card was the one on file from the deposit I'd put down to secure the reservation at this expensive restaurant my sister insisted on. Everyone at the family table turned to look at me expectantly, like of course I'd be paying after being exiled to sit by the garbage. I picked up that bill, looked at my sister's smug face, smiled calmly, and said 5 words that made the entire room go silent: "Not my table. Not my bill." I'm Eli, and this is the story of how being humiliated at my sister's engagement party became the moment I finally stopped letting my family treat me like their unpaid servant and emotional punching bag. Let me take you back to how we got to that restaurant, because that night wasn't an isolated incident of cruelty. It was the culmination of 28 years of being the family's problem solver who got zero recognition and constant disrespect in return. Growing up, I was the responsible one. My sister, Lena, was the charismatic one, the social butterfly, the life of every party. She made friends easily, charmed teachers and relatives, always knew the right thing to say to make people laugh. My parents adored her energy, her confidence, her ability to light up a room. I was quieter, more analytical, the kid who actually did the work while Lena took the credit. I became an event coordinator professionally, which is ironic because my entire childhood was coordinating things for my family that Lena got to enjoy. When Lena wanted a birthday party in middle school, who planned it? Me. Who made the guest list, sent invitations, decorated, organized games? Me. Who got thanked at the party? Lena, for being such an amazing host. I was 12 years old, managing a party for my 14-year-old sister, and nobody thought that was strange. I remember standing in the kitchen after that party, cleaning up while Lena showed off her gifts to friends in the living room. My mother walked in, saw me washing dishes, and said, "Thank you for helping, sweetie. You're such a good sister." Helping, like I'd just pitched in, not orchestrated the entire event. That was the first time I realized my work would always be invisible. This pattern continued into adulthood. When Lena needed a ride to the airport at 4 a.m., who did she call? Me. When she locked herself out of her apartment, who came with spare keys? Me. When she needed someone to help her move, set up her furniture, organize her closet? Me. And what did I get in return? Occasional thank yous, but more often, complaints that I didn't do enough or didn't do it exactly how she wanted. My help was expected, not appreciated. I was useful, not valued. I remember one particularly painful incident when I was 23. Lena called me crying because she'd lost her job again. This was the 3rd job in 2 years and needed help with rent. I sent her $800, money I'd been saving for a certification course I needed for work. She promised to pay me back within 2 months. 3 months later, she posted Instagram photos from a weekend trip to Miami. Designer sunglasses, beachfront hotel, expensive restaurants. When I asked about the rent money she owed me, she got defensive. God, Eli, I needed a break. I've been so stressed. Why are you always so obsessed with money? I never got that $800 back. And I never took the certification course, which meant I stayed in a lower position at work for another year. My parents enabled this dynamic completely. They'd call me when Lena needed something, saying things like, "You're so good at organizing, can you help your sister with this?" Or, "Lena's so busy with her social life, she doesn't have time to handle these details." You don't mind, right? They framed my competence as a reason I should serve, not as something to celebrate. Meanwhile, Lena's social media success, she had a moderately popular Instagram where she posted lifestyle content, was treated like she'd won a Nobel Prize. My parents showed her posts to everyone, bragged about her follower count, talked about how she was building a brand. I had an actual career coordinating major corporate events, managing budgets of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that was boring to them. Lena posting a photo of her coffee got more family enthusiasm than me landing a six-figure client. The exclusion was constant and casual. Lena would have sisters' days out with our cousins and not invite me. She'd plan family dinners and forget to tell me until the last minute. She'd organize trips and say there wasn't room for me. I specifically remember my 25th birthday. Lena organized a family dinner at a nice restaurant, or so I thought. When I arrived, I realized it was actually a celebration for her hitting 50,000 Instagram followers. My birthday was just the convenient date. Nobody had even brought me a card. The entire evening was spent discussing Lena's social media strategy and engagement rates. When I tried to bring it up to my mother later, she said, "Oh honey, you're not the type who needs a big fuss made over birthdays. Lena thrives on that kind of attention. You're more low-key." Translation: your feelings don't matter as much as hers. But when Lena needed something? Suddenly, I was the first person she called. 6 months before the engagement party, Lena got engaged to Marcus, a guy from a wealthy family who worked in finance. The engagement was a big deal. His family had money and connections, and Lena was obsessed with impressing them. She wanted an engagement party that would wow everyone, that would get amazing photos for her Instagram, that would establish her as someone sophisticated and successful. But she didn't want to do any of the actual work of planning it. That's where I came in. She called me 2 weeks after getting engaged, her voice syrupy, sweet. "Eli, I need your help. I want to throw an engagement party, but planning isn't really my thing. You're so good at this stuff. Would you help me organize it?" I should have said no. I should have learned from the hundreds of times before when helping Lena ended with me doing all the work and her taking all the credit. But some stupid part of me still hoped that maybe this time would be different. Maybe for something as important as her engagement, she'd actually appreciate my help. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "Something elegant. Maybe that restaurant downtown, the one with the private room and the tasting menu. Intimate, maybe 30 people. Beautiful, but not over the top." The restaurant she was describing charged $300 per person for their tasting menu. For 30 people, we were looking at $9,000 minimum, plus drinks, plus service charges. "That's going to be expensive, Lena. Who's paying for this?" "We'll figure it out. Can you just call them and see about availability? And pricing? And maybe start a guest list?" Over the next 3 months, I did everything. I called the restaurant, negotiated the menu, put down a $1,500 deposit from my own account to hold the date. I created the guest list, designed and sent invitations, coordinated with the restaurant on dietary restrictions and seating arrangements. I spent hours on the phone with the restaurant's event coordinator, discussing everything from flower arrangements to wine pairings. I researched photographers and found one willing to work within a reasonable budget. I created a timeline for the evening to ensure everything would flow smoothly. Lena was involved only in making demands. She wanted specific flowers that cost extra. She wanted a photographer for the event. She wanted custom cocktails. Every decision made the bill higher, but she waved away concerns about cost. "Marcus's family has money, they'll probably contribute," she'd say. Or "Mom and Dad will help." Or "We'll work it out." But nobody actually committed to paying. And because my card was on file for the deposit, the restaurant confirmed with me that the full amount would be charged to that card unless another payment method was provided before the event. I asked Lena about this multiple times. "Who's actually covering the bill?" "Because the restaurant needs to know." "Don't worry about it, Eli. It's all handled." It was not handled. But I was so deep into planning this event that backing out felt impossible. I'd already invested dozens of hours and $1,500. Walking away would mean that time and money was wasted. Looking back, I can see this was the sunk cost fallacy in action. I kept investing because I'd already invested so much, not because the situation was actually worth continuing. The night of the party, I arrived early to make sure everything was set up correctly. The private dining room looked beautiful exactly as Lena had envisioned. Flowers, candles, place settings, everything perfect. I'd bought a thoughtful gift for Lena and Marcus, a vintage wine from the year they met that had cost me over $200. I dressed carefully in a navy dress that was elegant but not attention-seeking. I wanted to fade into the background, help everything run smoothly, and maybe, just maybe, get a genuine thank you from my sister. Guests started arriving. Marcus's family, our extended relatives, Lena's friends, my parents. Everyone was dressed up, excited, complimenting the venue and the setup. I watched as people walked in. Heard them commenting on how beautiful everything looked, how elegant the setup was. Not one person knew I'd been the one to arrange all of it. Lena stood at the entrance greeting people, accepting compliments like she'd orchestrated everything herself. Lena arrived last, making an entrance in a white dress that was almost wedding-level formal. She looked beautiful, and she knew it. The photographer immediately started taking pictures. I approached her to say hello and give her the gift. "Lena, everything looks great. The restaurant did an amazing job." She barely glanced at me. "Yeah. It's perfect. I knew this place would be ideal." No mention of the fact that I'd found the venue, negotiated with them, coordinated every detail. Just, I knew this place would be ideal. People started finding their seats. I looked at the seating chart I'd created based on Lena's input. I was supposed to be at the main table with family, but when I approached the table, all the seats were taken. Lena was there, Marcus, our parents, his parents, and our aunts and uncles. No empty chair. "Lena, where am I sitting?" I asked quietly. She looked at me, and I saw something calculated in her eyes. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. "Oh, Eli," she said, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "This table is for family only. I thought you'd understand." She gestured toward the corner of the room where a single fold-out chair had been placed against the wall, right next to the trash can station. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable over there?" The room went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then, someone laughed. Then, someone else. Then, it spread like wildfire. People thought it was a joke, a sisterly tease, something funny. My mother looked at me with an expression that clearly said, "Don't make a scene." My father studied his water glass like it held the secrets of the universe. Nobody defended me. Nobody said, "That's cruel, Lena." Nobody offered me their seat. I stood there, gift still in my hand, feeling 30 pairs of eyes on me, hearing the laughter echo off the walls of this beautiful room I'd spent 3 months planning. And I walked to that fold-out chair by the trash and sat down. For 2 hours, I sat alone while they ate a 5-course meal I'd arranged. The servers would walk past me to get to the trash, sometimes apologizing for needing to reach around me. I could smell the garbage every time someone threw something away, while they laughed and toasted and took photos. While Lena gave a speech about how blessed she was to have such amazing family support, while Marcus thanked everyone for coming to celebrate with them, I watched Marcus's mother lean over to whisper something to Lena, saw them both glance at me and smile. I saw my cousin taking selfies at the family table, making sure I wasn't in the background of any of them. I saw the photographer carefully angling shots to exclude my corner entirely. Not once did anyone mention my name, not once did anyone acknowledge the months of work I'd put in. I was invisible except when the waiter needed to refill my water or clear the empty space in front of me where a plate should have been. The waiter had asked me quietly if I wanted to order something, looking uncomfortable about my situation. I'd declined, my appetite completely gone. He'd brought me bread and water anyway, a small kindness that almost made me cry. "Right now, you're watching me relive the most humiliating moment of my life. You're hearing about my sister exiling me to sit by the trash at an event I planned. And most of you won't even leave a comment. You'll consume my pain for entertainment and scroll away without even acknowledging you were here. If that doesn't make you uncomfortable, maybe it should. But for those of you who actually have empathy, who know what it's like to be treated as less than by your own family, drop a comment, let me know I'm not alone in this." Then the bill came. The waiter walked directly to me. Because the restaurant had my card on file and my contact information as the event organizer, he placed a leather folder in front of me, and I opened it to see the total, $3,200. The itemized charges were all there. The tasting menu for 30 people. The premium wine pairings Lena had insisted on. The custom cocktails. The upgraded flower arrangements, the photographer's fee. Every expensive decision she'd made, now summarized in cold numbers on a piece of paper. The table went quiet. Everyone was watching. Lena was smiling, that same calculated smile from earlier. My mother said, "Eli, just take care of it and we'll sort out who owes what later." Later. That magical time that never actually comes when you're supposed to be reimbursed for fronting money for your family. I looked at that bill. I looked at my sister's smug face. I looked at my parents who'd watched her humiliate me and said nothing, and something inside me that had been bending under the weight of their disrespect for 28 years finally snapped. I closed the bill folder and slid it to the center of the main table. "Not my table," I said clearly. "Not my bill." The silence was deafening. Lena's smile faltered. "What?" she said, trying to laugh it off. "Don't be ridiculous, Eli. Your card is on file. For the deposit, which I paid 3 months ago to hold your reservation. The deposit that you promised to reimburse me for and never did. But this bill? This is for the table you said was for family only, the table I wasn't allowed to sit at, so it's not my responsibility." My mother tried to intervene. "Eli, we can discuss this later. Let's not make a scene. I've been quiet through every scene you've made at my expense for my entire life," I said, my voice shaking with rage I'd suppressed for decades. "I coordinated this entire event. I spent 3 months planning every detail. I put down my own money to secure the reservation. And Elena seated me by the trash can. So no, I'm not paying for a celebration I wasn't welcome to participate in." I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard chaos erupting. Lena was panicking, Marcus was asking what was happening, my parents were arguing. The waiter was asking who would be settling the bill. I walked out into the cool night air and got in my car. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit for 10 minutes before I could drive. I could see through the restaurant windows as people scrambled, pulling out cards, arguing about who should pay what portion. My phone started blowing up immediately. Calls from Lena, from my parents, from my aunt. Text messages ranging from angry to manipulative to desperate. "Lena, you just humiliated me in front of Marcus's family. How could you do this? Mom, Eli. Please come back and pay the bill. We'll discuss the seating situation later. Dad, this is embarrassing for the entire family. Be the bigger person." The irony of being called embarrassing by the people who'd just let me sit by the trash for 2 hours wasn't lost on me. I turned off my phone and drove home. The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of messages. Apparently, they'd scrambled to pay the bill by having multiple people put it on their cards, which caused a huge fight about who owed what. Marcus's parents had covered a significant portion, but they'd been clearly displeased about the chaos. My parents had fought with Lena about her spending choices. My aunt had complained about being expected to contribute. The evening had ended in disaster, and it was somehow all my fault for not quietly accepting my role as the family's ATM and punching bag. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Instead, I started making changes. I removed my card from the shared family accounts we had for group gifts and events. I deleted myself from the family scheduling app where I'd been tracking everyone's appointments and coordinating logistics. I canceled the streaming service subscriptions I'd been paying for that everyone used. I changed my emergency contact availability from 24/7 to scheduled hours only. Every little way I'd been making their lives easier, I stopped. Cold turkey. Within a week, the complaints started. Lena couldn't access Netflix and was outraged. My mother couldn't figure out when my cousin's birthday party was because she'd relied on my organizational system. My father needed a ride to pick up his car from the mechanic and was annoyed I wasn't available. I referred each of them to alternative solutions. Netflix has their own subscriptions available. Maybe check directly with the cousin about party details. Uber is very reliable. I wasn't being mean. I was just no longer being their personal assistant. I also started investing in myself. I booked a trip to Ireland I'd been dreaming about for years but had postponed because family events always took priority. I joined a pottery class I'd been interested in. I started seeing a therapist to work through the decades of being undervalued. My therapist helped me understand that I'd been conditioned to equate my worth with my usefulness. That I'd learned to accept crumbs of affection in exchange for enormous amounts of labor. That the family dynamic wasn't my fault, and breaking free from it wasn't selfish, it was survival. My friends were overwhelmingly supportive. "You should have done this years ago," my best friend told me. "They've been taking advantage of you forever." 2 weeks after the engagement party, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Eli, we need to talk about your behavior lately." "My behavior? You mean me setting boundaries?" "You're punishing your sister over a seating misunderstanding. It's childish." "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Dad. She deliberately humiliated me in front of 30 people at an event I spent 3 months planning, and you sat there and said nothing." His expression shifted. "We thought she was joking. For 2 hours? You thought it was a joke that I sat alone by the trash for an entire engagement party?" He was quiet. "Then, you've always been the easy one. The one who doesn't need attention, who handles things quietly." "Lena. She needs more support. What I needed was for someone to tell her that wasn't okay. What I needed was for my parents to defend me. What I needed was to feel like I mattered as much as she does." "You matter. Then act like it. Because right now, the only time I matter is when you need something from me. I'm done with that." He left without apologizing, but something in his expression told me he was starting to understand. A month later, my mother came by. This visit was different. "Eli, I owe you an apology," she said, and she was crying. "I've been thinking about that night, and about how we've treated you over the years. You're right. We've expected you to just handle everything and never complained when you weren't appreciated. That wasn't fair." "It wasn't," I agreed. Lena's behavior that night was unacceptable. I should have said something immediately. I was so focused on not making a scene that I didn't defend my daughter when she needed me. And I've been doing that your whole life, haven't I? Prioritizing Lena's feelings over yours. Why did you let it happen for so long? Why was Lena always the priority?" My mother sat down heavily. "Because you were so competent, so self-sufficient. You never seemed to need us the way she did. She was always struggling, always needing help, and we got into a pattern of focusing our energy there. But that wasn't fair to you. You deserved attention and celebration and support even if you didn't demand it." "I see that now." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I've been talking to my own therapist about this. She helped me see that we parentified you. Made you the family caretaker when you were just a child yourself. And then, we kept that dynamic going into your adulthood because it was convenient for us. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. I didn't forgive everything immediately, but I appreciated the acknowledgement." Lena never apologized. "Not really. She sent a text 3 weeks after the party saying, 'Sorry things got weird at my engagement party, can we move past it?' No acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. No recognition of the humiliation or the years of taking me for granted. Just a vague, 'things got weird,' like the situation had happened to both of us rather than being something she'd deliberately orchestrated." I didn't respond. I didn't need her half-hearted non-apology. The consequences for Lena were more severe than just losing her free personal assistant. Marcus's family had been horrified by the seating situation and the bill drama. They'd seen the real dynamics of our family, and it made them question what kind of person Lena really was. Marcus started noticing other patterns: how Lena treated service workers, how she talked about people behind their backs, how she always positioned herself as the victim in any conflict, how she blamed me for ruining her party instead of taking any responsibility for creating the situation. The engagement lasted another 4 months before he ended it. When he broke up with her, he specifically mentioned the engagement party as a turning point. Seeing how she'd treated me and then blamed me for the fallout showed him a side of her character he couldn't ignore. Lena blamed me, of course. Said I'd ruined her relationship by making a scene at the party. But I knew the truth. I'd just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own behavior. 6 months after the engagement party, I'm living a completely different life. I took that trip to Ireland and it was magical. I spent 2 weeks exploring castles, hiking through green countryside, staying in cozy bed and breakfasts. I met interesting people, tried new foods, and had time to just exist without anyone's demands on me. I'm getting good at pottery and have a whole shelf of slightly lopsided bowls I made myself. There's something therapeutic about working with clay. Shaping something beautiful from nothing, accepting imperfection as part of the process. I'm dating someone who thinks my organizational skills are impressive, not something to exploit. He thanks me when I help him with something. He remembers my birthday. He introduces me to his friends as someone important, not as an afterthought. I still have a relationship with my parents, but it's boundaried and conditional on them treating me with respect. I show up for events when I want to, not out of obligation. I help when I choose to, not because I'm expected to. My mother has been making an effort. She calls to ask about my life, not just to ask for favors. She came to my pottery class showcase and bought one of my bowls. She remembered my birthday this year and actually made it about me, not Lena. My father is slower to change, but he's trying. He apologized recently for all the times he stayed silent when Lena was cruel to me. Said he thought staying out of it was neutral, but he understands now that silence was taking her side. And Lena? We barely speak. We're civil at family gatherings, but the closeness we never really had is definitely gone. I'm not her built-in support system anymore. I heard through my mother that Lena's struggling. She's had trouble keeping jobs, her Instagram engagement has dropped significantly, and she's moved back in with our parents temporarily. Part of me feels bad for her. But mostly, I feel relieved that her problems aren't mine to solve anymore. Sometimes I think about that moment at the restaurant. Me sitting by the trash, the entire room laughing, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. And then, I think about standing up, sliding that bill across the table, and saying, "Not my table. Not my bill." That was the moment I started choosing myself. That was the moment I stopped accepting crumbs and started demanding a real seat at the table or building my own table altogether. I'm not sitting by the trash anymore. I'm not the family's unpaid coordinator anymore. I'm not the easy one who never complains anymore. I'm Eli. I matter. And I finally believe that. The girl who would have paid that bill just to avoid conflict doesn't exist anymore. The woman who walked out of that restaurant knows her worth, and that's worth more than any family approval I used to desperately seek. My sister thought she could humiliate me into staying in my place. Instead, she pushed me far enough that I finally left that place altogether. Best decision I ever made. Here we are at the end, and I'm going to bet that most of you who watched this whole story won't do a single thing to engage. You've heard about family betrayal, public humiliation, and finally standing up for yourself, but you won't hit subscribe. You won't share this with someone who needs to hear it. You'll just close the video and move on, having consumed my trauma without giving anything back. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of dynamic I just spent 30 minutes describing escaping from, people taking and never giving. So, maybe prove me wrong. Maybe be different than my family was. Subscribe, comment, share. Show that this story mattered to you. Or don't, and prove that most people really are just takers. Your choice. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the family member who does everything and gets nothing? Have you been humiliated by people who should protect you? Have you had to walk away from toxic family dynamics? Tell me your story in the comments, because sharing these experiences helps others who are going through the same thing. And subscribe to this channel seriously. Actually click the button, because I'll keep sharing stories about setting boundaries, walking away from people who devalue you, and learning that your worth isn't determined by how useful you are to others. These stories are for the helpers who never get helped back, the organizers who never get thanked, the competent ones who get exploited instead of celebrated. You deserve better. You deserve a seat at the table, not a chair by the trash. And if your family can't see that, maybe it's time to build your own table.